Good morning. Sorry, I was trying to figure out the stupid live thing again. You'd think I would have that down by now, but I don't. So I figured it out. But then I was so excited about figuring it out that I turned it on before I was actually ready to go. So, all right, now we're ready to go. So we've got Meadowsweet today. So yeah, the monographs are there. So this monograph I did not write. You'll see down at the bottom. This is one of the American Botanical Council monographs. The ABC is an organization that provides support for herbalists and herbal organizations in the United States, and they have an amazing group of monographs. So I borrowed theirs. So we have Meadowsweet. This is one of my favorite plants. I just love this. So the name right now is Philipendula ulmaria. But a synonym for it. Hi, good morning. Hi. So the older name is Spirea. Is the older genus. Okay, so we'll discuss that. That's part of the story of Meadowsweet, and it is in the Rosaceae family. So related to what plants?
Roses.
Roses, yeah. Yeah, do you know of any other plants in the Rosaceae family? You want to know? Hey, from Georgia. Hi, Teresa. Rose definitely is that the one. We had hawthorn on May Day. Yes, yeah. So hawthorn. Oh, so, which, by the way, my hawthorn outside is just starting to leaf out. So it's been covered with buds all year long. And May Day is when hawthorn is supposed to flower. Well, Southern California is not the ecosystem for hawthorn. So ours is this is a black hawthorn. And it's like, I'm supposed to be in the Pacific Northwest and I have no idea what I'm doing in Southern California. But it did just come out with little leaves and it started to blossom. So I'm very happy about that. Rosa, hi. Oh, my pleasure, Rosa. Thank you for joining us. So I had classes on yesterday, and I used all my cups, and they're over in the kitchen. So we have the little cups. So you can just like refill your little cups over and over again. Here's Mauricio. So these are adorable, and actually I do love these little cups. So you can be dainty. My mom instilled in me a love of tiny things. Good morning, Mauricio. So hopefully you like tiny things too. I was just saying that the cups, our usual teacups, are over next door. So we have the little bit ones. And then I will put the tea right here. So you can just refill as you need. All righty. So, and there's monographs back on the back table. I want that. So, this is Meadowsweet, so a rose family plant. Now, when we talk about rose family plants, the qualities that you want to think about with rose, as soon as you know that is something in the rose family, there's going to be a couple of things. Mauricio, what do you think of? Astringent, exactly. So the rose family plants are always going to be astringent. That's part of their chemistry. So you know it's going to be firming, tonifying. Probably the chemistry is a lot of yes, tannins, and tannins are part of the larger family of the astringent chemicals called flavonoids.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is a very flavonoid-rich plant, and that will tell you a whole bunch. What does it tell you that it is flavonoid-rich? If you know that it's rich in flavonoids, it's going to do a couple of things that you can think of immediately. Inflammation, yes, it's going to help to modify inflammation in the body, and we'll go into that a little bit more deeply after we taste it. Yeah. It's also going to be tonifying to the tissues, right? It's going to be astringent. It's going to be tightening and improving the resilience and the strength and the elasticity of tissues. And then there you go, Marina. Nice job. Yes, Marina gets 10 points. Tones tissues, absolutely. And then the third one is that they tend to be antioxidant. They reduce oxidative damage to tissues, which is a thing that contributes to inflammation, and it contributes to the breakdown of tissues. So all of those are just so nicely interwoven in how they just support general tissue health in the body. All right, so I'm gonna shut up a little bit and we're gonna smell this. So what do you think about the fragrance, the scent?
That's mine.
Yeah, it's not really aromatic. I mean, so it doesn't have volatile oils. I think is what I was thinking, and maybe what Mauricio was saying. But there is a scent.
It smells medicinal.
Yeah, medicinal.
Yeah.
Smells a little dusty.
Dusty.
This sounds really negative.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of formaldehyde.
Formaldehyde.
But it doesn't smell
that little bit of
bad.
sweetness, yeah.
I don't know what it is. Formaldehyde, like.
It's a chemical that's used in labs a lot as a preservative of tissues. So when I was in high school and we were still doing dissecting, yeah, I know that smell of formaldehyde from that. Smells stick with you. Scent memories are just so deep in there, and it's actually one of the things that I really love when we're talking about flavors and scents. You've seen this in classes so often. People come up with these strange, like, okay, this is going to sound weird. This is like, people have said that things smell like the smell of concrete on the side of the pool in the summer, right? And everyone knows, it's like, I know exactly what that smell is, right? I'm not saying that it's applicable here, but yeah, weird smells come up like that. And it's like,
That's so funny.
that's the scent memory that I've got. That's what my brain is saying. So yeah, formaldehyde. Cool.
But it doesn't smell bad.
Yeah, exactly. It's not bad. We have more friends coming in. Hi, welcome. Hey. We are drinking, good morning. We have chairs right over there, and we can scoot together, or we can set up another table, or we can just not. A table isn't needed. It's just sometimes you like to have like something to put your tea in. You can be cozy. So we're just smelling the meadowsweet. Meadowsweet is a plant in the rose family, the Rosaceae family, known as Philipendula ulmaria. It is a plant that these are commonly used as landscaping plants, and they're very common. There are so many different cultivars and so many wild specimens that probably, Teresa, for you in Georgia, in your area, and in other kind of areas that are in Southern California, this is yet another one that is abundant in other regions and not so abundant in our region. But we can grow it as a garden specimen. So then if we take it into our mouth, we're going to sip it. We want to taste what the flavors are going over our taste buds, and also see what the liquid itself, if there's any change in how the tissues of our mouth feel, right? So they're lubricated, they're moist, they're relaxed, or maybe they're very dry, because we all have different tissues, right? So we're just saying what happens when this fluid comes in contact with our body. And we have a lot of vigilance in the mouth, right? Because this is the entry to our body. This is where stuff comes in. And it's the last chance we have to say, oh no, I don't want this thing in my body, and spit it out, right? So there's a lot of vigilance, a lot of awareness there. So we want to use that when we're introducing, especially a new plant that we've not ever worked with before. Teresa, can you retype that? Because I'm not sure what, I think that autocorrect tweaked your language a little bit. So if you could retype your question, I will be happy to answer it. So,
Not my favorite.
not your favorite? Oh, that's funny. I think of it as so neutral.
Yeah. But like it.
Okay. So you're not wanting to spit it out and go,
No.
oh, this is not my favorite thing. This is the most horrible thing you've ever, because I automatically went to that, right? As a not my favorite means you hate my Meadowsweet tea.
No. It's just like.
Yeah.
That's like a.
Plant. I have, Reeves bridal wreath. Yes, Anthony water spray. Okay, so yeah, okay, that's what it wasn't. It was just my brain not understanding what you were saying. Again, because it doesn't grow really well here, I don't see it around. But yes, bridal wreath is one of the common names for it, and actually the spirea genus name, the former genus name, comes from the root word spiral, and it's called spiral because it was used for making bridal wreaths, right? It was put into wreaths. So yes, I'm glad that you said that, because that is Reeves bridal wreath is going to be one of the cultivars. Now, this is an important thing. When we are talking about meadowsweet as an herb, we are specifically talking about Filipendula ulmaria, or formerly Spirea ulmaria. Sometimes, if you have medicinal plants, they can be, everything in this genus is going to be medicinal, like in the roses. Pretty much all of the roses are going to be medicinal. There's variations, but you can use a rose that's going to be medicinal. And sometimes it's very specifically not just the genus, but also the species. Right, so passion flowers like this. With passion flower, you must use the specific species that are medicinal, because some of the other ones are toxic. And there are lots of different passion flowers around. And some people just harvest passion flower and make medicine from it, not knowing that they can be taking in some toxic compounds. You know, we were talking about that with the passion fruit, which was delicious, by the way. So it's a perfect example. So the fillet. So when you are working with something that is cultivated, that is used as an ornamental plant, when we cultivate a plant, we're selecting for certain traits. Maybe we want the blooms to be a little bit bigger, right? Or we want a specific color, or we want it to grow up high or wide, or in some way we've modified that plant to grow the way that we want it to. And that's when you have named cultivars like this, that's quite often what's happened. They've created a version of the plant that is really lovely and unique. Does that have the same medicinal qualities as this one? We don't know, because they're selecting for certain traits and they're not paying attention to the concentration of flavonoid chemistry in the plant. They don't know about the flavonoid chemistry in plant. Is it the same as this one? Because they've been looking at making the blooms a little bit pink and a little bit bigger, right? So you can use, possibly, I would do more research. A lot of different Filipendulas are medicinal. Is yours the same? I don't know. I'm not saying what you have is usable. I'm saying that check to see, because it doesn't grow around me. I don't have experience with the many different species of Filipendula or Spirea. I would go in and check to see if it is confusing to you. Then yeah, it may be that a lot of people are using it medicinally, and it's fine. The official plant, the official medicinal plant, is sometimes called no, I said I wasn't going to use that term. I'm not going to use that term. The official medicinal plant is often the one that you'll find for sale, but it doesn't necessarily mean that yours isn't good. So I don't know is what I'm saying. But check it out. All right. So what do you think about the tea other than meh?
I like it.
Okay, yeah.
I like the taste.
What's up, man?
I would like to see how does it look that.
It's a beautiful. They're little.
I was-
Oh, there you go. Yes, yeah,
Oh.
yeah, yeah.
Those are different. Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
and you can see they're very similar to hawthorn flowers, very similar to apple flowers, right? Or peach flowers, because all of those are rose family flowers, and they have those 5 petals with the multiple pistils. They're cute, and apparently they just make these big puff balls. Quite beautiful. All right. What do you think about the energetics? So when we're talking about a plant, generally we want to see the effects on tissues, right? We have 3 different areas that we look at. We have, we want to kind of sense whether a plant is heating. Is it spicy and warming and stimulating to our body? Or does it feel like it is cooling our body down? Sometimes that's hard to tell. But what is your sense, or do you have a sense? Also, it's not binary, right? So some are kind of neutral. It's all somewhere all along that spectrum. Both the plants exist and we exist. And so we want to see what that feels like to your body.
A little heat.
You feel a little heating?
I
Okay.
do too. I don't know if it's because it's hot,
Right.
but it feels
Yeah.
not like a sedative. It feels
It's more
more
kind of activating.
energizing.
Uh-huh. Okay.
yeah, it feels like tingling a bit.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, but in a good way.
Right.
Like waking up.
Yeah. Waking up and activating that. Yeah. Cool. Nice. So it isn't the pungent heat that we associate with most traditional hot herbs, right? So when we think of hot herbs, often we think of things like cayenne or ginger, cinnamon, right? And so it doesn't have that chemistry. So there's something else that's creating that kind of feeling of warmth in you. So that's kind of a fun thing to look at and kind of see what's doing that tingling. It can be a number of different things. It is generally considered to be a cooling plant because long term it has that astringent tonifying quality, which is one of the other energetic patterns, right? This is a plant that is more tonifying. We already talked about that. It improves elasticity and strength and resilience of tissues. And by doing that, that can kind of modify how heat moves through the body, how inflammation moves through the body. You have strong elastic tissues. They're going to keep inflammation more local and not have it kind of spread through tissues, right? That's one of the ways that it's anti-inflammatory, as Mauricio was saying. It's anti-inflammatory for that way, and also because it specifically blocks inflammatory pathways in a really important way, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So tonifying, cooling, but it is not really strongly sedating. Yeah. And I think it may be that tannin activity, that astringency of the mouth, it tightens those mouth tissues. And then the oral mucosa doesn't want to be tight and dry, right? It wants to be juicy because saliva is really important to oral mucosa. So there's a secondary, a reflexive response to that astringency that sometimes that can be kind of what is going on in your tissues, right? It can be a number of things. So also, is it drying or moistening? Do you have a sense of that?
I feel like
Drying.
initially it feels, you can feel that astringency. It's like drying,
Mhm.
but I mean, I've been drinking it and I don't feel like I'm super dry at all.
Right.
Personally.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does have that astringency. So it's certainly drying to the tissues that it comes in contact with, right? So it's going to astringent dry out those tissues. We also want to remember when we're astringing those tissues, that's stopping fluid release from underlying tissues. And that can actually have a net effect of holding moisture in the body. Nonetheless, we do tend this tends to be a neutral plant in fluid mechanics, because while it is astringent, it also does have some mucilage. It has a little bit of that moisture to it. It has both an astringent quality and also a lubricating quality, which makes it really, really nice, very, very beneficial for mucosal tissues, because healthy mucous membranes have exactly that structure. They're tonified and strengthened, and then they have a nice layer of moisture on top of them. That is really the perfect tissue state for mucous membranes, which is why this is a plant that is a tonic for mucous membranes that it comes in contact with. So energetically, tends to be cooling. It is astringent, tonifying, and it is more neutral in the fluid energetics. And again, those are qualities that are often found in plants of the rose family. So let's talk about the chemistry of Meadowsweet because it's really cool. Number one, this former name, the primary class of constituents in Meadowsweet that make it that have made it of a plant of focus medicinally are the salicylates. I spelled that incorrectly. Salicylates. So salicylates are salicylic acid compounds. Salicylic acid. And you will see if you look at the chemical breakdown of Meadowsweet, it has a number of different salicylate compounds. So we have methyl salicylate, which is the same compound that's found in and the flavor of wintergreen. You know, that very distinctive wintergreen flavor, that is the flavor of methyl salicylate. So there's a small amount of methyl salicylate, isosalicin, and a salicylaldehyde. So 3 different salicylate compounds are found in Meadowsweet. Does anyone know what salicylic acid compounds do? What they're associated with?
Well, they're definitely.
This is recorded, Teresa, absolutely. And you can go back onto YouTube and watch this all the time. I'm sorry,
Oh, I said it's definitely an acne medication.
It's definitely an acne medication, absolutely, yes. Yeah, it's used for redness and irritation to inhibit sebum production. And it's a really good way of using Meadowsweet. Instead of using an isolated synthetic salicylic acid, making a tincture or strong extract of Meadowsweet and using it topically, yeah, absolutely. Primarily, salicylic acid is most notably a part of a compound called acetylsalicylic acid, which has the common name aspirin. So aspirin was a term created by the Bayer Company in the 1800s for the chemical that they isolated, salicylic acid. They isolated this. Now it's abundant in a lot of plants, but it's particularly high in Meadowsweet. So isolated salicylic acid from Meadowsweet, and you can make something a synthetic analog of a natural product by attaching an acetyl group to it. You attach an acetyl group to it, and all of a sudden, you don't have a natural compound that anyone can find somewhere. You have a special compound that your company manufactured, and you can get a patent on. So in order to patent salicylic acid, they attached an acetyl group to it. They took the name spirea, and they took off the S and they added on an A, or they didn't take off the S, they kept the S, they added on an A and added on an N at the end to make the name aspirin. So the name aspirin is the spirea with an acetyl group added to it, made into the chemical name. So, or the common name. So this was the term made up by Bayer. Bayer lost the patent. It is now, it's a commonly used compound. But so Meadowsweet is often used as an anti-inflammatory for pain reduction because it has a number of different salicylates, and salicylates have different levels of effectiveness in reduction of inflammation. Some plants can be rich in certain salicylic acid or salicylate compounds that are not really well absorbed via digestion. They have to be used topically. Some are the opposite way. So when we have a wide range of them, we have a wide range of ways that this plant can modify inflammation. And the way that salicylic acid compounds generally modify inflammation, I think we talked about this in class recently about another plant, but I'm blanking on it, is that they reduce compounds called prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are hormone-like compounds that regulate processes in the body. And there are certain prostaglandins that are triggers of inflammation. And when we take NSAID drugs, things like ibuprofen, acetaminophen, aspirin, we block prostaglandin production in the body, and that reduces pain, the sensation of pain, inflammation. So they're used as anti-inflammatories, as non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. They're not steroids, but they are reducing specifically prostaglandin production. And so Meadowsweet is able to also reduce prostaglandin production, but the difference is that the NSAIDs generally tend to indiscriminately reduce prostaglandin production across the board. There are beneficial prostaglandins and there are harmful prostaglandins. The prostaglandins that increase inflammation and the prostaglandins that decrease inflammation, prostaglandins that protect the gut mucosa, and prostaglandins that harm the gut mucosa. So when you are selectively reducing them, you can have pain reduction, but also protect and heal the gut. And that's what Meadowsweet does, which makes it also significantly different from NSAIDs, because NSAIDs, with their indiscriminate reduction of prostaglandins, one of the side effects is gut damage and trauma. Ulceration of the intestinal tract because of those very concentrated and harmful chemicals just causing erosion of the tissues. That's why you always have to take ibuprofen. You must take it with food. You want to limit its effects. It's also going to cause damage to the liver, to the kidneys, right? There's a lot of damage that comes from that. Meadowsweet, while it is used as a pain reliever, as an anti-inflammatory, it is also used as a plant for support of gut health. It helps to relieve digestive disturbance and inflammation. And it is a regulator of the parietal cells in the stomach. So in the stomach itself, we have, there's our little stomach. So we have cells that line the stomach, right? And these cells are called parietal cells. Parietal cells. And parietal cells are the cells that produce hydrochloric acid, right? And hydrochloric acid is the acid that our stomach produces that breaks down proteins and ionizes minerals and protects against pathogenic organisms coming in with our food supply, right? So, so when those parietal cells are too active, we have too much hydrochloric acid. When they're too low, we have too low an amount of hydrochloric acid. If they're damaged, as is the case when we take proton pump inhibitors, things like Prilosec and Nexium, will shut down the proton pumps within the parietal cells. Those proton pumps are the part of the cell that makes hydrochloric acid. So those things like Nexium and Prilosec are called proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs, because they inhibit activity of those proton pumps, inhibiting production of the hydrochloric acid. The problem is that when you inhibit those proton pumps, those parietal cells will say, I need those proton pumps. I need that hydrochloric acid. And so you have this parietal cell and it's made these proton pumps and you've just inhibited them and it goes, I'm just going to make more. And so it makes more. And then you inhibit those and it makes more. And then you stop taking the medication and all of these become active again, which is why it's so difficult to go off of proton pump inhibitors, because your body just keeps on making more of those proton pumps because that's the way digestion is supposed to happen. Right? So it's very, very hard to get off of proton pump inhibitors. It's very hard to get off of that family of antacids. They are really, really harmful. But you can use Meadowsweet as a plant that quiets down proton pumps, quiets down parietal cells when they're overactive, but doesn't completely block them and isn't going to cause the cells to produce more of those proton pumps. And it's very, very good for those people who are wanting to get off of the medications, but need something to give them relief, because it is really painful and really harmful to the esophageal lining, to the gut, for people to go off of those medications just cold turkey. So Meadowsweet regulates those parietal cells without shutting them down.
That's usually for like acid reflux.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So for acid reflux, now the truth is also that acid reflux is more often a condition of too low an amount of stomach acid and not too high an amount of stomach acid. So I'm not going to go into that right now, although I really, really want to. But especially the older that you get, right? old bodies just tend not to hypersecrete stuff. Our bodies are decreasing in their production of stuff. And that's not a pathology. That's what happens as we get older. So if you see a 20-year-old with reflux, it is more likely to be true hyperproduction of hydrochloric acid. If you see a 50-year-old with high acidity, it's much less likely to be true elevated stomach acid. It's generally going to be low stomach acid, and we need to support that. So I'm going to go there. So Meadowsweet for any kind of pain of the gut, for healing the gut. And if we think of that, that quality that we were talking about that astringency layered with the mucilaginous quality, right? We were talking about that being the perfect tissue state for mucous membranes. Well, that's exactly what it's doing through the whole gastrointestinal tract. It's astringing, tightening and firming those and protecting them with that little layer, reducing inflammation. It just kind of goes through and it does really happy tissue support all throughout the gastrointestinal tract. Yes?
I'm wondering if it's also used for period pain?
It can be because it is a systemic reducer of sensitivity to pain. Prostaglandins increase our sensitivity to pain, and especially when we are having menstrual cramps, there are specific prostaglandins that are increased during the menstrual cycle that are higher, and they increase our sensitivity to pain. We are just more reactive at that point. And so that's one of the targets of salicylic acid derivatives. So yes, absolutely, it can be used for that. It's not going to be, I would combine it with something like cramp bark, right? Because cramp bark is working more on the smooth muscle of the uterus to help to relax that muscle tissue, because that's what's, in spasm. So relaxing that muscle tissue and also taking Meadowsweet to reduce that sensitivity to pain and reduce the inflammation. That's a nice combination there. If you also throw in some magnesium, because magnesium deficiency is a driver of period pain as well, you might have like a nice beginnings of a really nice protocol there, right? Kind of depends on the person, but that's what I would start with.
So it can be used as a swap for ibuprofen?
It can be used as a general pain reliever, as a kind of all-purpose pain relief. It's not as strong, right? Ibuprofen is going to be stronger. And sometimes you need to take pain relievers, and I do not get on anyone for doing whatever they need to be comfortable in their body. If you need to take ibuprofen, then you take ibuprofen, and do some other research into what else you can do. You can take Meadowsweet along with your ibuprofen if you need to take something along with it, or if you're trying to reduce your usage of a pain medication, or if you don't want to use it and you just want to take something that is a good pain reliever. I like to combine Meadowsweet with some herbs that are a little bit stronger in pain relief, specifically if you're wanting to use it as a pain reliever. So Meadowsweet and Jamaican dogwood is a really good combination, because Jamaican dogwood is more of a strong pain reliever. Now, the downside to some pain relievers, and what I do like about Meadowsweet, is many herbal pain relievers tend to be strongly sedative. And so using them during the day can be problematic, because you have to get things done, right? And so you don't want to be sleepy when you're at work, but you want to not be in pain. And so that combination, Meadowsweet and Jamaican dogwood, tends to reduce pain without being sedating, which is nice. The cramp bark doesn't tend to be sedating, because it very specifically focuses more on the smooth muscles and not so much the skeletal muscles and not the nervous system, right? So that would be a good combo there too. Let's see. So digestive support, general pain relief, specific pain relief for arthritis, for gout, for articular joint inflammation. So all under the kind of the umbrella term of arthritis. Meadowsweet is very beneficial for that, again, for its pain reducing effects, but it also helps to clear metabolic waste products that contribute to inflammation, primarily uric acid. So uric acid is a metabolic waste product that accumulates in the joints. generally tends to accumulate in the extremities, and gravity being what it is, it generally tends to settle down to the bottom of our bodies. And so we see it often in toes, especially in the big toe. Pretend my thumb is the big toe. Gout, yeah, gout is in the category of arthritis because it's inflammation of the joints, but it's very specifically an accumulation of this compound. And Meadowsweet is specific in clearing uric acid out of the body. So even if you don't have gout, but you have arthritis, generally, oftentimes, arthritis is increased arthritis pain can be increased by uric acid in the joints because uric acid causes irritation in those joint tissues. So anything that clears uric acid is automatically going to relieve some pain in the joints. So a different way of reducing pain, right? So we see a number of different ways that Meadowsweet is very, very good at helping to reduce pain for different conditions. It is also a very good febrifuge, So when you see the root word fuge, that means to inhibit, to calm down, and febra refers to fever. So a febrifuge is an herb that reduces fever. Again, if you sort of think about it in that as an alternative to ibuprofen, to aspirin, something that things that are commonly used for cold and flu. And it's important to note that when you have a viral infection, when you have a fever, generally, you don't want to stop that fever. You don't want to inhibit the fever. The fever response is a very important part of our immune system response because when we have, say, a flu, right? A flu is a viral infection. Viruses have a very narrow range of temperature that they're comfortable in, and our immune system knows that. And so it mounts a fever in order to make an inhospitable environment in the body for the virus. And so we're trying to kick the virus out by jacking up the fever, and then we're like, oh, I have 102-degree fever. I better reduce that because that's not healthy, because we're focused more on the numbers than on the actual body that's experiencing those numbers. And so we take something to drop that fever down, and all of a sudden the body has put a tremendous amount of energy to mount that fever response, and now you've just shut it all down. And that virus is super happy. You've made the virus really, really happy because now the virus can replicate, and you've damaged your immune system. Right. So if you need to reduce a fever because it is dangerous, that's a different thing. But so often we just automatically assume a fever should be reduced, and it's absolutely not true. That fever is an important part of our immune system. This does not go for very young children or other people who are unable to self-regulate, right? An infant is unable to regulate temperature, and those temperatures can go up and down, and so that temperature needs to be controlled. Someone with an autoimmune disorder, a very, very elder person might need to, but the vast majority of us let that fever go. And the high point fevers, the temperature of concern for brain damage, that's one of the primary concerns, keeps on getting higher. And so it's now, I don't remember what it is now, but it's really high. It's like 104, 105 is what they're saying now. Don't treat a fever until it gets over that, because you're not going to get brain damage, but what you are going to do is damage your immune system.
I don't even know if you can answer this question, but what for like heat exhaustion? Like, so story, my husband does AC, he's in the sun a lot, definitely was overworked, got heat exhaustion, not once but twice, so the second time around he had those crazy fevers.
Sure.
Would that be something you let do its thing, or like, do you know?
There's a condition called juvenile febrile. There's that root word again. Febrile disease is a disease where you're unable to regulate that temperature, and it moves even later, and that could hit in various conditions, right, where your body is just unable to regulate. That regulation is part of the autonomic nervous system. Right, that's the root of it, is autonomic nervous system. So if you think of that, adaptogens regulate the autonomic nervous system. If you're having problems with that self-regulation, that would be the root that you'd want to support. So that's what I would maybe give, if this is a repeated situation with your husband, then using things like Tulsi
Okay.
would be a great thing to use. And then things that are cooling, right? So you could do a Tulsi and hibiscus, right? Super yummy. That would be delicious. But hibiscus is cooling, right? It is cooling. It's astringent. It's cooling, cooling, cooling. And then I would also maybe throw something moistening in there to bring that moisture into the body, right? So we don't have to, as an herbalist, I'm not a doctor. I don't treat diseases. I don't heal diseases. I'm an herbalist. But I can look at a condition like this and say, wow, I see what's going on in your body. You're having autonomic dysregulation, right? And your heat is affecting you. So let's cool the heat and regulate the autonomic nervous system. I don't need to know what the name is. I don't need to treat something. All I need to do is see those are the systems and the energetics that are out of balance. And this is why we talk about energetics.
Yeah.
And that, right? Because if you look at something as an energetic state, you don't have to know anything about it. You can just say, dude, you are hot. Let's cool you down.
Yes.
What cools you down? The sour flavor cools you down. The flavor, the organic acids and flavonoids, the chemistry of sour plants cools us down. So we have the chemistry, we have the body, and that's all we have to do. And maybe get some moisture in there, right? So that's the way to think about it, and not like, I don't have to treat disease. I'm an herbalist. Okay, so febrifuge, if you are using it for regulation of the fever, and just like its effects on the hydrochloric acid, it's not indiscriminately just shutting down the fever response, it's just quieting it down. Wow, I know, I respect this fever. I know the fever response is important, but this is making me twitchy and irritable because heat makes us twitchy and irritable, and I just want to modify it a little bit. Or I have a child and I'm worried about my child. So I can make a tea of meadowsweet and maybe some yarrow and elder, two other very good diaphoretic herbs, things that kind of move heat out of the body, open up the periphery and let heat just kind of be released as sweat, right? So we can, have that fever, but have the fever be released that way. So so we don't just have to sit with fever. We can do things to help our comfort, to support the body's fever response without shutting it down. Yeah. Let's see, we can use meadowsweet topically. So for skincare, absolutely. And you do see quite often in herbal products, meadowsweet will be added to facial serums. You can infuse it into oil and make a salicylic acid rich facial serum for your body. You can also infuse it into oil and make salves to use topically. These salicylate compounds are used topically. Bengay, not witch hazel, the other W, wintergreen based products are commonly used for muscle soreness, right? Methyl salicylate is really good topically for reducing pain of the muscles. That's why we use methyl salicylate compounds, and meadowsweet is good. Now, it isn't really high in methyl salicylate. How would you be able to tell, just without doing a high performance liquid chromatography, how could you tell that it's not rich in methyl salicylate, which is the flavor of wintergreen? It doesn't taste like wintergreen. It doesn't smell like wintergreen, right? So methyl salicylate is the wintergreen smell. And so there's some in there. There's not a huge amount. That also would be, Teresa, I know you're not watching anymore, but this would be a way of testing your plants for the chemistry. I do hear that fresh plant medicine, you can have some of that kind of wintergreeny sweetness to it. So that would be a thing to check in yours. But being an aromatic compound, it is volatile. It's not going to last for a long time when you dry the plant as much. Let's see. Very, very safe product. It's used for children. It's used for elders. There are no contraindications or side effects that we know of associated with that, other than there are people who are sensitive to salicylates and should not take salicylates. So that's a specific just sensitivity, and there are salicylate-free diets out there. This would be a plant, of course. It would not be in a salicylate-free diet. But otherwise, it is very, very safe. This is also, just as a fun one, this is one of the 3 most sacred plants of the Druidic tradition in European magical herbalism. The meadowsweet and vervain, blue vervain, and a species of mint were 3 of the most sacred of the plants in the Druidic tradition. And so for people who like to kind of play with that tradition, if that's part of your cultural heritage and you want to look into that, or just interested in, there's a lot of Druids there, the Druid community is increasing by leaps and bounds with these days, because Druids are like, oh, we like knowledge, and we like plants, and we like art. Like knowledge and plants and art. Yeah, I'm there. So yeah, Druids are awesome. They just have long rituals, because all of them are like, but I have a song to sing, and now I have an interpretive dance, and now I want to give you a lecture about this, and now we're going to do all of this ritual. It's like, oh, 3 hours later. So, but I love Druids. All right, so that is Meadowsweet for you. Now you will hear the whole aspirin story applied to white willow. Right? People always say willow bark is the source of salicylic acid for aspirin. It's not. It's meadowsweet. It's spirea. Yes, the chemical is the same, but it's not actually the same. And here's one of the things. So a lot of times you'll read about white willow bark being used for pain relief because of the salicylic acid. White willow bark is nasty tasting. It's really astringent. It's very bitter. It's just not pleasant at all. And it only has 1 salicylate compound. Meadowsweet has 3. Yeah, it's like, it's so much better to use meadowsweet than white willow bark. You can use willow bark. You want to use willow bark, use willow bark. But I think that meadowsweet is a better option. It's better tasting tea. It's easier to formulate with. It's safer. White willow bark can be a little bit irritating to the gut. It does not have that protective. It's not a rose family plant, so it doesn't have that astringency and that mucilaginous thing. But willow is in the genus Salix. And that's the root word for salicylic acid. It's in the family Salicaceae. So there's a lot of plants in the Salicaceae family, a lot of trees in the Salicaceae family that have salicylic acid. So this is why people tend to think of it when they're thinking of aspirin, because it's named for the chemical, but that's not the story behind it. It's actually the willow bark. But that's the meadowsweet. That's the willow bark connection. All righty, there is no class next Monday because it's Memorial Day, and I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but my husband and son don't have to teach or go to school, and so I'm not going to get up early and leave them. So no class next Monday, but the next one we will be here. Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us online, and I will see you in a couple weeks. Bye.
Just curious.